Hello guys, and welcome to a new Wargame video today. This time round we're going to be looking at some Israeli units, and basically we're going to have some in-depth discussion about what each unit does and what their stats are and what's likely to change. Now you have to remember that this is on the beta patch, so all of the units are likely to change in some way or another in terms of their statistics, but their role will probably stay the same, which is kind of what we're going to go through in this video. So I hope you guys enjoy. So what are we looking at in terms of helicopters for Israel?
So Israel actually they have quite a nice helicopter range, really, as far as, you know, anything that's not the United States has really in Blue 4. Let's start with, we've got the Lahatut TOW, which is a 40-point little bird with a tow launcher, which, I mean, honestly is pretty bad. It's really bad because, you know, we mentioned before with vehicles that the base tow is pretty much useless for the price. It's, you know, the same thing here, and you've got a 4 HP helicopter that's going to get one shot all the time. It's only got 4 missiles and it's 40 points, so I would say don't bring this in your deck unless you're doing some kind of 1980s game.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then you got the Lahatut Mapats. What do you think of this? It's interesting that you do have the 2,800 meter range Lahat on this little bird.
Now, I really like this unit. I think it's really good value for 60 points because yes, it's a little slow. Yes, it's only got 4 strength, but 2,800 meter range is a long range ATGM, and especially depending on who you're playing against, a lot of the time, you know, some factions don't have AA, or at least, you know, like decent non-radar AA that reach out to that range. And so the 2,800 meter range is really nice for sort of tripping off enemy tanks in the front line. Because you've got to remember as well, the way that it always works is you have a tank or infantry or whatever you shoot, you know, the tank or APCs even. And then the AA is usually a few hundred meters behind that. It's usually 300 or 400 meters behind. Unless, you know, they're using something like SAS. So a lot of the time you can fire off shots against enemy armor or enemy APCs on the front line, and they'll have to move their AA in towards you to try and actually kill it, and you can just pull back after firing 1 or 2 shots. So I think for 60 points, especially, you can get it hardened, I think, which is quite nice. It's just a really nice unit.
Yeah, you definitely have to micro it correctly though. You don't want this to get called out by a single missile, else you will be losing 60 points for, you know, not very much. But like you said, most people keep their AA or significant AA quite far behind their front line in terms of, you know, defending their units with them. So you can take advantage of that with the extended range. Anyway, let's move on to the Petn, which is basically an Apache with Hellfires, basically exactly the same as the Dutch one they introduced. It does have the Hellfire missile system with the 2,800 meter range again, 70% accuracy, 50% stabilizer, 26 AP, and it does fire very quickly. What do you think about this beast in comparison to the Lahatut? Like, do you think it's worth like extra 70 points to get this?
Right, so is this unit better? Yeah, it's a better unit.
Of course it's better, yeah.
I think for the price, I would always take the Lahatut. Because the one thing I think people often forget a lot of the time is AA is really strong in this game. You know, if the enemy has like a Crotal or something, you've lost 130 points, and you can't do anything with this unit against it. And the longbow can get away with it because it has the recon stats and also the fire and forget missile, so it can sort of like drive by whatever it's shooting at. But this has got a, you know, it's a semi-active missile, so it can fire on the move, but it can't just fire 2 shots and then run away. It doesn't work quite like that. And I just think for the price, you don't get enough of a performance increase to merit like risking that 130 points all the time.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. That the fact that you don't have that recon stat, like you said, the longbow does, and that definitely kills its usefulness outside of just being a standard HGM helicopter, which the Lahatut fills quite nicely, in my opinion.
I mean, the thing with this unit is it's not a bad unit. I just think it's not as cost effective as Lahatut. So, if you've killed the enemy AA, then this unit's fantastic. They can't do anything about it, and it'll just kill all their stuff. But a situation where you kill all of their anti-air pieces is really rare. I mean, even beyond that, you don't know you've killed all their AA most of the time. So it's just one of those units that's so situational, it costs so much, that I personally wouldn't take it in either this or the Dutch deck, for example.
Fair enough. So let's move on to the last couple helicopters. We have the Zephyr B and the Zephyr Ii. Now the Zephyr B is your standard AH-64 Cobra with the 70mm Hydra rockets and the FFAR 70mm rockets. And this thing is great for just annihilating infantry in the open with all of those rockets, and also unarmored APCs and vehicles. So that's pretty much sort of your standard Cobra there. But then we have the Zephyr E with the Stinger, with the infrared missiles with 70% accuracy and 70% stabilizer. What do you think about this?
This is a really nice unit, because if you compare and contrast this to the MH-60 DAP, the US anti-air chopper.
Yeah.
The DAP in this patch is 65 points. So for 5 more points than the DAP, you get rocket pods over twin machine guns, and that is so drastically better. You just mentioned before about the Zephyr B being able to just demolish infantry. Well, this has the same capability. It still has 38 rockets with the Hydras. And, woe betide any infantry squad that gets caught out by rocket pods in this game, because they just get absolutely melted. And the thing that makes this so good is it's a really good opening helicopter to, obviously engage and fight against enemy helicopters in the opener.
Yeah.
And also, after that, a lot of the time, for example, the Chinese TY-90. It's probably the best anti-air helo in the game, I'd say. Like a solar anti-air helo unit. It costs 90 points. And once you've used it in the opening, you generally just have to pull it back and just use it defensively, because what we just said with the Petn, a lot of factions have a lot of very good long-range anti-air, so like the Crotal, the HQ7, the Red 4, the Tunguska, this sort of stuff. And you just lose that TY-90 if you send it even close to the front line. But with this Zephyr, it's got more use than that. It's not just an anti-air helo. It can go around, it can kill APCs, it can stun infantry, if you micro it well. So I really like this unit. I think it's really good.
Yeah, you made a very good point there. Anyway, let's move on to the air tab of the Israelis. Now things start to get really interesting. We've definitely got a massive mixture of units that have all sorts of roles, and aren't necessarily roles that I would think that Israel would gain access to. But we'll start off by looking at what is basically a Kahu with seed missiles. And what do you think about it, the Ayat?
It's a perfectly okay seed for 70 points, but compared to its bigger brother that we'll look in a second, I would personally not take it. But again, the thing is, it's not a bad seed unit. It's perfectly usable. It's just very slow.
Yeah, well, you do get 3 of them, and it sort of reminds me a bit of the Puff. But anyway, let's move on to the Kurnas 2000. This is, like you said, the big brother that you were talking about. It's a Phantom with 2 anti-radar missiles with 60% accuracy and 26 AP power. Now, this thing is much more beastly than the Ayat.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is definitely up there for one of the best, because it's unprototyped, one of the best unprototyped seed units that Blue Flag gets. 40% ECM at good speed. It also has those Sparrows as well. So personally, I would take this trained or rookie even. But if you did take elite, those missiles could do a decent damage against enemy superiority too, if you have to use it for that.
Yeah, if you brought in the seed and an enemy aircraft comes in to counter it, then sometimes you can get pretty lucky with these Sparrow missiles. But when it comes in rookie, it's not going to be hitting anything too often because of the 40% accuracy. But if you brought one in elite, then you might, like you said, you might start to do some damage. So pretty, nice seed aircraft, not prototype, pretty good. Let's move on to the Baz. Now this is sort of your F-16C, isn't it? kind of
F-15.
F-15, sorry. The Baz with the 100 points, it's okay. It's not the best. It doesn't have any standout ordnance. It has its 4 infrared missiles and 4 SEMAC radar missiles. But the one that really stands out for Israel is the Baz Meshipur. What do you think of that?
Well, it does, but just before we go over, I think you're missing out a bit on the Baz, because the Baz has some pretty good stats if you think about it, because you can bring 2 of them elite. It has exceptional air detection, max speed, or not max speed even, but 1,000 kilometers an hour, 30% ECM, and for 100 points, I think this is actually. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not anywhere near as good as the next plane, as the Meshipur, but I think it's okay. With 2 elite, it might see some action in Blue 4 General, or decks like that, I think. But like you said, Baz Meshipur is fantastic. This is one of the best ASFs in the game, in my opinion. It has exceptional air detection, 50% ECM, and the big standout is you get 2 of them hardened, and not just 2 of them hardened, but you get these fantastic missiles, the Python Thor and the Derby. And the Derby has amazing accuracy. 70%, I think, is the highest.
Yeah, it's one. Yeah, I think it matches the highest. Yeah.
And this is just for 165 points. The fact you get 2 hardened is just really nice. This is a really good ASF.
Yeah. Also, the Derby's Fire and Forget, with a 70% accuracy, which together is just really, really good. And those 4 missiles are less likely to miss because they come in hardened as well. I think a good nerf to this unit would be to maybe only get them as trained instead of hardened, or something like that. Sort of reduce their veterancy as you can bring them in, because they are incredible aircraft and very, very strong. Not something that I really expected at all when I was going to look at the Israeli Air Tab. But yeah, very awesome aircraft for air supremacy.
Yeah, so
let's move on to the Kurnas, which is the first of the anti-tank aircraft we're going to be looking at today. It comes with the hobos.
The hobos.
The fantastically named Electro-Optical Missiles. What do you think about that 20 HE power, 130 point aircraft?
Basically a fast Nighthawk, if you think about it that way. It has the same stats as the Nighthawk bomb. But I do have to really put in a big caveat here, because the way laser guided bombs has changed. A lot of people might have seen some of the posts on Reddit or the Eugen forums, but they've changed the way it works. So now they miss missiles. Before you would once you fired the laser guided bomb missile, it would always hit. Now they don't always hit. And if you don't get a direct hit with one of these, you do hardly any damage to an armored unit. So whereas in the last patch, this would have killed a 3-top armor tank in one go with both missiles. Now, obviously, if they both hit, then it will, but just keep in mind it's not quite as cut and dry as before. I mean, they probably did deserve a nerf because laser guided bomb planes were super strong. But always keep that in a pinch of salt. I think they're a bit better now as sort of a anti-light vehicle, anti-infantry unit in a way, because you can still drop those two 20 HE bombs, and if you split them, you can do tons of damage with them.
Yeah, I think it's quite something quite to note is how they have changed the optical missiles and stuff. Instead of nerfing their straight up stats, they've nerfed their chance. You know what I mean? By reducing the accuracy, it's kind of made it more of a luck thing, which I don't particularly like at all. I think just generally nerfing their HE values or something like that would have been a lot better. Or maybe even nerfing the range at which they can deploy them, so that you have a better chance to shoot down the aircraft before they drop their payload or something. Sort of like an indirect nerf would have been something that I think would come across a lot better in the game. Because what happens now is you have these aircraft that are incredibly powerful, but there's always that chance that, especially on a aircraft with 4 bombs, you're gonna miss like 3 of them. There's that chance that can happen, and that
Well,
can just be
that did
so
happen.
irritating. Yeah, it does happen, and it's
I
irritating, and it's annoying to play with. So that's just something that I don't really like about the latest patch in the Israeli like nation pack. The fact that they brought that in, that's just sort of like a general sort of thing that I didn't particularly like about the changes.
Well, I think the big thing to note about this is I would have much preferred a price nerf rather than that sort of accuracy nerf. I would have rather they increase the price of all of the laser guided bomb planes and done it that way. But either way, I mean, this is the hand we've been dealt. This is what happens now. And going back to example, so we'll have a look at the RAM now. The RAM, I guess, is probably more accurate. And in another game I played against Bubblebox, I dropped all 4 missiles on one Buratino, and only one of them hit. It didn't kill the Buratino. And this is one of those things. I've actually now in this patch I've taken most laser guided bombs planes out of my deck unless I had a spare slot for them.
Well, the thing is, like before the patch or like before that change, this aircraft would have been insane.
It would have been. It would have been amazing.
You got 4 cell missiles with the 10 HE power. It's gonna, like you say, 1 pass the top armor tanks.
3 top armor.
Yeah, 3 top armor tanks. Yeah. But it also has 50% ECM and 1,000 km/h speed. So this thing's just a nightmare for Red 4 players. And Blue 4 players if you're playing Blue 4 versus Blue 4. But yeah, it's just such an exceptional aircraft that could have really made like Israel stand out on its own, because it of course it is prototype. Now, yeah. But because of the nerf to the bombs, it's just irritating to use. And like you said, Val, you can miss like multiple of these missiles and then get nothing from it, which is quite disappointing.
That's true. I mean, this is an indirect massive nerf to like Eurocore, because the biggest weakness of Eurocore, in my opinion, in sort of like high level play was if someone played Commonwealth against you, you just lose all your tanks all the time to Harriers because they only have 3 top armor. But now you get 2 cards of those 2 A5s, and they're not going to die as often now, which is pretty good if you're a massive Eurocore player, or not Eurocore, sorry, Dutch German, and Eurocore as well, I guess, with their Leclerc. But big nerf to them, big nerf to the T80s as well. So the T80UM isn't as bad as it was before, but still, like I said, I think I would have preferred they changed it just so it was like a price nerf, or like maybe a range nerf
that weren't based on luck. Like, it's just irritating. Anyway, let's move on to the Larvae. Now, this is a 150 point bomber, has 40% ECM and 1,000 km/h speed, has 10 500 kilogram bombs. What do you think about this thing? I honestly think it's a bit overpriced to find use.
I don't know. No, I really like this unit. I'm not gonna lie. This is fantastic. It does an absolute ton of damage. I would take it for 150 points just because the ECM makes it worth it, in my opinion. It's got really high ECM, very fast speed. So, I mean, this is kind of like F111C level bombing destruction, really, I think. But I mean, I'll have to do a bit more experimenting with like the spread of the bomb drop, even.
Yeah.
Because that does have a big impact on how useful it is in certain situations.
Yeah, one thing that I'm sort of comparing it to right now is the Su-24M, is it? With the sort of carpet bomb, very fast aircraft. But yeah, I don't actually like the cost of it. I think maybe it's like 145, 140 points. It's something that you'd always bring. But like, I think 150 points is nicely balanced. It's something that you might choose over something else. I have another bomber that we'll get to eventually that I prefer over this because of like suppression effect and the fact that you can pinpoint targets and stuff, like you say about the spread of the bombs and so on. It's very effective against like a spread of infantry in the open, but in like a town where you want something a bit more direct, I find this thing kind of annoying. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next series of planes. We have, first of all, the Nets, which is your, well, a pretty standard cluster bomber. 7 AP power isn't actually too bad. It obviously doesn't match up to the Griffin at all. But you know, pretty standard. 6 bombs, 7 AP power. That could do some damage if you manage to like land it on top of like some stunned tanks
Yeah.
or
Well,
armor.
you need 4 hits on a. I think it does the same amount of damage to 3 top armor as it does to 4. So you need 4 hits with the bomb. 4 out of 6 to hit your target, and I'm not actually sure exactly how effective it is because the spread is a little so. But as far as cluster bombers goes, it's quite a good one. It's quite a good one because most cluster bombers I think aren't really that strong compared to. And the only standout one really is the Viggen with the massive 10 AP bombs.
Oh yeah, there's a Viggen is what I meant, not a Griffin. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, pretty standard. Maybe a little bit better than average cluster bomber. But we got the Barak next, which is the first, well, the only I think ASM plane for Israel.
Anti-ground, anti-ATGM, not ASM. ASM planes are all in the naval tab. I don't think they added any for Israel, but it's actually quite nice. I mean, do keep in mind these Mavericks are only 26 AP, so will require like I think 4 of them to kill like a super heavy tank usually. But if you bring one elite, the accuracy is really good, and if you sort of micro it round, so you sort of go in for a run on the enemy side armor, it can be really nice. I take one of these in my deck because like I mentioned about the accuracy nerf for the laser guided bombs. Like if that accuracy nerf hadn't have happened, I would just take both the Kernas and the Ram and not the Barak. But now I take the Ram and the Barak. I think is probably what I'll go for.
Yeah, I find that this is one of your sort of bog standard air to ground, infrared, anti-tank kind of deal. It's very similar to like a Hornet in the way that it's played, and it can be frustrating. Again, like 50% accuracy, it isn't when they're only trained. They do actually miss quite a lot of missiles, and that can get annoying. But definitely, in my opinion, better than the like laser guided bombs at the moment. Just to take those Maverick missiles instead. What do you think about the Barak 2? Now, this is like an air superiority fighter, but is definitely nowhere near as good as the Baz, is it? Although saying that, it has better stats.
Yeah. So.
For less points. I just made the comparison, and the only difference I can see that would maybe make a difference is the number of missiles that you get, but the 50% ECM in comparison to 40% ECM, interesting.
So this is like the Yak 141, the Soviet plane. This is like the Yak 141 that sort of like gone to the gym and got really buff, and then come back and started shooting down Redfall planes, right? Because it has amazing ECM, amazing speed. It's 145 points. I think the 141 is 140. So for 5 more points, you get better ECM, I think. 2 veteran, which is great, and these amazing missiles, the Python 4 and the Derby. Like, remember what we said about the accuracy on the Derby? You get 2 veteran. This is not going to miss very often. And, I mean, obviously the one problem is this is sort of like a one-plane sort of deal. You kill one plane and then you back out. You can't really keep it circling. In the same sort of way you would with the Meshupar. That has a bit more staying power with all the missiles. But I think for 145 points, this is definitely worth considering for taking. It's probably more cost efficient than the Meshupar, but you do lose a bit of capability with it.
It's definitely strong in terms of statistics up front, but the payload difference is quite significant in my opinion, and that does get annoying if there's multiple aircraft in the airspace and then you like shoot down one and you try and go for the other one and you realize you're out of ammunition and you've got to get out of there, and it does definitely leave the aircraft vulnerable to attack then, as opposed to with the Meshupar you're gonna always have like enough missiles to do what you want to do before you evac it. So I kind of made like a wrong call there in terms of like it just being, not as good. But when you're looking at like the number of missiles, that's just how it is.
I think the Mesh Power also has pretty cool tail art. I think it has better talike on the plane, so I'll go with
Tail
that.
art,
Yeah.
yeah, nice
This
eagle on the back
DLC
there.
has some really cool tail art for the planes. Like a lot of detail. I've got to really hand it to Eugen. They've made some really nice models in this DLC.
Yeah, I don't know. The skull on the barracks pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, yeah. But you get double because the F-15 has like 2 tail fins, so you get double the tail art.
Double eagles, right? Anyway, yeah, moving on to the Shahak, and now pretty, yeah, meh.
I mean, this is pretty
50 point
useless. I'm not going to lie.
infrared.
It's pretty useless.
Just kind of added it for historical accuracy. Then you got the Nesher with the 70mm rockets. Do you think this could come in handy?
Now, this could come in handy. That's for sure. It's rocket planes kind of that they have that interesting niche where that they actually can kill lightly armored units really effectively, and they also obviously this will just kill infantry in one pass. It'll just demolish any infantry squad.
Yeah, 76
Yeah,
Hydra
it
rockets
will
on target. It's going to just
really
destroy enemies.
Really hurt the enemies. You can also bring 2 elite, so that does give an accuracy buff. But really, with the rockets, you don't really need it. It's not too important. And with 10% ECM, I think if you're going to use this unit, you want to kind of use it in a defensive manner, where if the enemy's sort of pushing onto you and their AA is maybe lagging a bit behind, you can sort of come in and get some cheeky kills on high value infantry squads, or like I mean maybe even AA pieces, because remember this will do a lot of damage to any sort of low armor units. So you can snipe out like CVs or AA with it if you've got vision, but I mean personally I don't have it in, but it definitely has a use.
Yeah, it's one of those units that we've been talking about throughout this sort of short series. It fills a card slot if you have extra.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I don't know, for whatever reason you were playing an airborne deck, Israeli airborne deck.
Please no, Israeli airborne. I don't think it's too great.
But if you had the extra slots, maybe. But let's move on to the Caf I Rc7, which is the napalm bomber for Israel. Same aircraft, just with different payload. What do you think about this?
So, as far as a base napalm bomber goes, it's quite good. It has a large amount of bombs, and if you're just aiming to block a road, this will do fine. But for 100 points, I'm not entirely sure just how good this is, because I mean, compare this to something like, you know, the thermobaric MiG that has the HE value, and that's like 30 points more, but you get like way more ECM, actually kill things with the napalm. I mean, I think if this was maybe 90 points or 85, I'd consider taking it a bit more, but I don't know. I'm not feeling this unit. But obviously, if you want napalm for like a road closure, if you want to close off an enemy road into a sector, this will do fine if you're playing just Israel.
Yeah, I agree that the price of this is what makes it off-putting, as opposed to, you know, bringing it in just as like an opener aircraft. It's, you know, you don't want to lose 100 points at the start of the game on a pretty mediocre napalm bomber. Then finally we have the Caf I Rc7 with the 1,400 kilogram bomb. Now, in my opinion, I actually really quite like this unit. It's useful in those scenarios where you have like a seed plane to support, and you can just like bring your seed in, they'll turn off their radar, you can drop that 1,000 kilogram bomb and get out of there. Like the 1,400 kilogram bomb, and the 23 HE power can do some serious damage to infantry, and it pretty much stuns every time. And what I found this fantastic for was like trying to bomb out infantry in towns, and then allowing your infantry to like move in and clean up, because it basically panics everything. And it's also a lot more sort of accurate than, I don't know if it's necessarily accurate, but like, you know what I mean? It goes where you want it to. The majority of the time.
I'd say it's a bit more. I think the word you're looking for is precise.
Yeah.
I think. You know, you drop this in an area, you're not gonna have to rely on RNG really, because the bomb blast radius is pretty damn big. Now, there's something quite a few people might not know, is that HE, as it goes up, gets significantly better per point. So the difference between 22 and 23 HE is a lot bigger than 15 and 16 HE. If I'm not completely mistaken, you know, obviously if I'm wrong about that, someone correct me, but that's the way that I think it works. And so this is like, it's like a discount B5, I'd say, a discount B5 with actual ECM. So it's a really nice balance. I think I really like how they've done this because it forces you to choose between the Lavia and the Caf I Rc7 because both I think are pretty reasonable options. You can both take two trained per card, and
Yeah.
I really like when you end up with units like this, like the Meshafar and the Barak too, where you've kind of you've got choices to make, and one isn't intrinsically better than the other. They just have a different role, and depending on the way you play, you can sort of take one or the other. And one isn't specifically 100% better than the other. There's not, one clear-cut winner when it comes to sort of
You just
price to performance.
got to find your favorite, and like you said, it's definitely something in terms of design choice that Wargame or Eugen has really made good use of with the Israeli Nation pack. I think that's definitely something that is incredibly interesting when you're looking at a lot of these units. Anyway, any last words about air and helicopters?
I think we've gone pretty in depth about these. They're all really, really pretty good. The Israeli air tab I think is definitely one of the better ones in the game, and the helicopter tab is nothing to scoff at either. So definitely not a weakness. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think in general, I was just quite surprised about how good the Israeli aircraft were. I didn't know what to expect, but they're definitely a lot better than I would have assumed.
Yeah, well, I mean, Israel historically does have a good precedent for dominating its foes with aircraft, but you never really know how it's going to transfer into game, and I think it's transferred really strongly. This is a strong air tab, no doubt about it.